Good afternoon. This is Sherry Blanton. I'm at the Public Library of Anniston, Calhoun County. And since we are in the middle of COVID, we are live streaming on Facebook. And eventually will be on YouTube for folks who'd like to watch it. And we are going to be talking about color today. First of all, let me just say a word or two about myself. I don't really like to plug myself, but for those of you who haven't run into me yet, I'm a Calhoun County Master Gardener and have been in that association for 22 years. And I'm the crazy plant lady. I've never met a plant I didn't love. I'm also the Southern Garden writer for the Anniston Star. So you can read me in there about once a month. And I also have a Facebook page, the Southern Gardener, Anniston Star. So you can tell me what questions you have, or if you have a suggestion for a program or an article that you would like for me to do, I would welcome it. We are getting ready for next year's programs, and ideas are always accepted. One of the things that I got really interested in about 2 years ago was the effect of color in the garden and color on people. It is incredible how colors can affect our moods, affect our emotions, affect our energy, affect our health. I saw a garden in Seaside, and it was full of little pops of color, and I realized how it sort of excited me to look at all those colors and how they had mixed them, and I got interested in colors. Colors play a big part in our emotions. They can stimulate us like red can. They can calm us down like pink can. They can make us sad like even red can make us sad. Red is also considered the color of passion and love. And colors can make or break your environment. In a lot of places, they use really bland colors to keep people quiet. They don't use a lot of red in areas because red causes so much excitement. But the way I was looking up red, and I realized how red is used in our vernacular. The color red has power. It excites us, it scares us, even saddens us. We all know how we feel when we see a red police light behind us, or an ambulance coming up behind us with the red lights flashing. Fire engines are always red, and we see them. If you have a red car and you get more tickets, there's a reason, because red cars get more tickets. Because if you've got a crop of white cars and gray cars and there's a red car, that's the one you'll look at first. We all know what a red stoplight does. It says stop. And if we see a stop sign in red, we know we're supposed to stop. We all know that red is the color of the power tie. And if you're a man and you really want to show your power, you wear a red tie. We also say, paint the town red, and today we're going to paint the garden red. That means we're going to celebrate. So we're going to celebrate the garden with red today. If you're saying in the red, that means you're broke. And if you say seeing red, that means you're really mad. And it can cause your cheeks to get red. And red eye overnight flight means your eyes actually get red. I always wondered what a red eye was. When people say I took the red eye and they flew overnight, it actually means your eyes get red. Now, if you're lucky enough one day, you may get the red carpet treatment. And someone with a microphone will say, "Who made your dress? You're so beautiful." And that's to make you feel special. So we're going to talk about red in the garden. Just a couple of thoughts about using red in the garden. It really pops in the landscape. It's difficult to have all bright red in the garden because it can be overwhelming, so you might want to mix up your shades of red. And you also will want to use it sparingly, and I looked at some pictures where red was here and there, and I noticed how my eye went right to the red. You notice I'm wearing red today. Teresa Kaiser, who's graciously allowed me to come again today, said, "Are you going to be wearing red?" And I said, yes. Red is a warm color, and red intensifies in the sun, and it's not a good color to put in the shade. So I'm really proud of myself because I came up with this new format, and I've got my little red sparkles that are moving. So we're going to get started here. As part of the programs I've been doing, I had to learn to understand the color wheel, and it's really neat. Had a lot of people say, how do you decide what colors to put together? It's very easy. Artists use a color wheel. Red is the primary color on the color wheel. That means that no other colors can make red. It's the brightest, boldest color. When you look at that color wheel, your eyes go right to the red. But notice that red has some company. It's got red violet, which is called a tertiary color because it's made by two other colors. And red orange is a combination of red and orange. And red can be a burgundy red. It can be a rusty red. And I found the names of some of these colors, and I thought they were really interesting. Maroon, ruby red, burgundy, rusty red, scarlet, red, and so when we start looking through these pictures, you're going to say, well, they're not really red, but they're all different shades of red, and you make them darker or lighter. If you add white to red, you get pink. And if you will notice that red is exactly opposite from green, when you mix red and green together, you get a power combination. And they're complementary colors. And in the garden, or in a poinsettia, the red with the green leaves is really outstanding. So now we've got a little background of why we're using red. The red is the look at me color. I just wanted to make sure you were paying attention to me today, so I wore a red shirt. But who can forget Julia Roberts in this red dress in Pretty Woman and the red pearls, the red stones that he gave her? Red gets our attentions. We talked about fire trucks are red. You don't ever see a white fire truck or a black fire truck. You see that red fire truck. You see a stop sign. You see a red car. I often think of people, and I hope this doesn't upset anybody, but they get to a certain age and they really want a bright red car. Maybe they need that little bit of extra attention. Red, of course, is the color of love. It's the color of passion, love, and lust. And often we think of red roses when we think of love. I have never gotten a dozen red roses, but maybe that will happen one day, and I will know that someone's sending me a message. Red is the color of festivities. But what's Valentine's Day without red? And what's Christmas without red? Christmas bows. Yes, you might find a pink one or a white one or a blue one, but most of them have some red. And most Valentines have red in them somewhere. You very rarely find a pink Valentine on its own, but pink goes with red, and they make very good Valentine colors. As a matter of fact, I have collected a lot of Valentine paper, and none of it was solid pink, but a lot of it was pink and red. And to celebrate Valentine's Day in February, we're going to talk about pink flowers. So we're going to paint the garden red. We're going to celebrate with flowers. You know, life has been a real downer for a lot of people. I know it has for me. I come out every day and I finished watching the COVID count, and I'm thinking I'm going back to bed. So we're going to just celebrate today. We're going to paint the garden red. We're going to look at a lot of beautiful red flowers. And I hope when this is over, you consider adding some red to your garden, judiciously, but adding it. This is called Salsa Red Coneflower, and this is a full sun plant, and it's really a dynamite red. But you see, it's not a red like my shirt is. It's a different kind of red, so we remember that red has lots of different ways to be red. I have to tell you a little story about this Darwin tulip, Pride of Columbia. I'm a Columbia, South Carolina girl, and my mom was a member of a club that sold red tulips every year, and these were called the Pride of Columbia. I've been in my house 48 years. She gave me this tulip 48 years ago. Tulips are considered annuals, but for 48 years, this red tulip Pride of Columbia reminds me where I came from, where I grew up, and of my mother. And every year I go out to see if my Pride of Columbia is back. Poinsettia. We're going to talk a lot about poinsettias because poinsettias are everywhere right now. And you see how that red goes with the green. And actually, if you'll notice that the red that you think are petals are actually bracts. And the little yellow things in the center, those are the actual flowers. So if you're going to pick up a poinsettia, do not ride around in it in the cold because it will really pout. And if you take it out of somewhere and you carry it in your car in this cold, please wrap it up in some plastic. They are not poisonous. The sap can make you itch. They might make your dog throw up, but they're not going to do you in. So they like moist soil, and they like to be between 65 and 70. Unfortunately, we keep our houses a lot warmer, and so sometimes they get a little unhappy. And even though they are in that fancy paper, take it off to water it so they can drain really well. Penta. This is what we call a pollinator flower. The birds and the bees that pollinate our plants, that enable plants to make more of each other, love this plant. And the bees, it's got the little, almost like little sippy cups. This plant is a red, but it looks like it's got a little bit of pink in it, but it is bright red, and it loves the sun. It's fairly drought tolerant, but if you want to encourage the blessed pollinators in your yard, just put some pentas out. Begonias. Oh, wow, look at this red begonia. It is gorgeous. I always like to have some red begonias in my garden, and you see again how gorgeous that red is up against those green leaves. Begonias belong in every garden, but I will say this, I have no luck growing begonias in the ground. I always put them in containers, but I love a container of red begonias somewhere in my yard to catch my attention. Last summer was my first summer to really get involved with zinnias. And as I wrote in the paper, I developed a zest for zinnias. This is a gorgeous red one. I bought a lot of seeds and we threw them out. And little by little, we just had this gorgeous cutting garden. It was always full of butterflies. And these are a full sun plant. And I have been studying begonias on the internet, and I've discovered half the world loves, zinnias. If you ever do this and talk to a screen, you'll find that eventually you trip on a word or so. So pretend like it was a misspelt word in an email that I didn't catch with my spell check. This is a zinnia, normally covered with butterflies. But I would encourage you to get some zinnia seeds next year and throw them around your garden and prepare to be amazed. And this is another full sun. One thing I did read, that if the sun is too intense, too burning, sometimes it can wash the red out. I have not had that experience, but I don't have that much sun. I love this salvia. This red salvia is with a wonderful bed of pink mums. This is an annual salvia. However, it does reseed and does come back. And you can tell this is not a bright red. This is almost a maroony red, but it's a red, and the mums are light pink, and they make a beautiful conversation piece. This is another salvia. I don't know the name of the salvia. I bought it at a plant sale. I just know that it spreads wildly, and the hummingbirds love it. But it is a true bright red, and it is a joy in the garden, but you have to keep your pruners handy because it will spread and spread and spread. But when the hummingbirds are hanging around, it's worth every minute of that pruning. Everybody knows what a knockout rose is. Knockout roses are the most splendid red. They almost glow. And these are another sun plant. And One thing you need to remember about knockout roses is they like to be pruned in February. I cut mine down to about 12 inches so it can get nice, solid stems on it. And I do deadhead my knockouts because I think they look prettier than when the spent flowers are on them. But that's a beautiful red. Camellia, what can I say? The most elegant flower in all the world. Yesterday, before the cold front heat came, I had at least 1,000 camellias that looked just like this one. I didn't have a heart to go out today because I know they're all mushy. But here's another red. You say, well, that doesn't really look like red. But remember, red can be in a lot of different shades of red. And this is, I'm not sure the name of this one, and the white on it is a little bit of variegation, but it's a beauty. Confederate Rose, this is a member of the hibiscus family, and this is a bright red one. It blooms. It looks a little bit pink, but I promise you it's bright red. And it blooms all summer long, and it gets to be like a small tree or a large shrub, and usually I do prune these back before the next blooming season. Again, you can see how gorgeous that green looks with it. This is, I'm going to try not to say this more than twice. This is one of my favorites. This is a Yuletide Cysanqua camellia. Okay, normally this Cysanqua does not bloom for me until Christmas. For some reason, the camellias went bonkers this year, and this particular gorgeous red camellia started blooming in October. And it is covered with beautiful red flowers. And if you see around the edges, it's tinged with a little darker red, but mine probably had 200 flowers on it. But it was an early surprise, Yuletide, Christmas, and that's normally about when I see it. I guess it knew that I had COVID fatigue, and it said Sherry needs some red in her garden. This is another great pollinator plant. It's called a Turks Cap Hibiscus. It's a mallow. This is the flower. It does not open up. It's sort of a little crinkled, but the yellow sulfurs adore it. And when it blooms, it'll be a cloud of yellow butterflies all flying around it. Now, it really, really, really does like to spread, so give it a good place to hang out, and then just watch for the butterflies. But it is a beautiful red. I almost forgot this one, and then I thought, red poppies. How do you have a program without talking about red poppies? The Flanders Poppy, it's a reseeding annual. It'll come back. But I remember every year, and I haven't done it in a while because I haven't seen them, the American Legion would give you a red poppy, a fake red poppy for a donation. It looked just like this. I read that this is one of the most popular wildflowers, so I'm going to plant some red poppies this year and see if I can get them to come up and just be a spot of red in my garden. This is a canna. I am not sure if mine is a tropical canna, whether it's an annual canna or a perennial canna. I usually dig them up, but this year I'm going to leave it out and see if it comes back. This is a gorgeous red. I know you're saying, that doesn't look red to me, but trust me, it was in front of my window and it is red. And they have gorgeous leaves on them. And again, this is another one that loves the sun. This is a perennial hibiscus, and the flower is as big as a dinner plate, and the leaves were kind of a dark purple, and it was absolutely magnificent. If you see that some of the leaves look rather chewed up, much to my sadness, I had sawfly, hibiscus sawfly, and that comes from a moth, and it lays these little caterpillars on the bottom of the leaves, and they chew the leaves up and make them look like a lace doily. But this flower is magnificent. Again, goes in the sun and comes back every year. So add a perennial hibiscus to your garden. Even with the sawflies, you'll love it. Here's another wonderful little rose. This is kind of a baby knockout. A drift rose has little tiny, dozens and dozens of little tiny red flowers all over. It comes in a lot of colors, but red's my favorite. I love when I look at the yard or my garden and I see the red, my eye goes right to it. This gets only about 3 feet high and maybe 3 feet around, and it will just fit in anywhere. It doesn't require a whole lot of attention, but it is a sweet plant in the garden. I love my lilies, and I'm going to be honest with you. People say, how come you don't know the name of them? Well, I have about 100, and I'm over 70, and I've lost the tags, and I don't recognize them all. But I love this lily because I love how the petals curve back, and it is a bright spot when it's blooming. When it quits blooming, it's a sad day in my garden for me because I look out the window at this gorgeous red lily. And you know, you can get lilies now to plant them for next spring. Brent and Becky's Bulbs has wonderful lilies, but there'll be a lot more lilies for sale as the spring comes. Please add some lilies to your garden. Here's another perennial hibiscus. This is called Disco Belle, and you notice the leaves are very green, and it really is a gorgeous dynamite red. Now, I had this planted in a different location, and I did not get the sawflies, but it's in full sun, and it's a beautiful thing. This is Home Run Rose. It is related distantly, I think, to the knockout rose. Knockouts are double normally, and this Home Run Rose is a single, but it is the most intense shade of red. You could probably order this online. I bought it from someone locally years and years ago, but it is probably the most intense red I have seen, and a beautiful performer. Here is the queen of the garden, the absolute queen. She should wear a crown. This is a tree peony. A tree peony is different from a herbaceous peony. This has a stalk on it, a woody stalk that never dies down, and every spring, if I'm lucky, it blooms again. I have had this one in my garden probably 15 years, and when I go out and see this red, I practically cheer. If you don't have a tree peony, it's time to get one. Amaryllis. This is red, 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 but you notice it's got a little hint of orange, and we know this is a bulb, and I've got lots of them planted in my house right now to come up this season. I also have saved all the ones from past years, and I put them out in my garden and hope they'll rebloom, and I've actually had some to do that. I'm not going to take credit for this amaryllis. It belongs to my neighbor, and he has the magic touch when it comes to amaryllis, and he's got about 6 pots that look like this. I'm thinking he may fertilize them, but he keeps them put up all winter, and he brings out the pots in the spring, and every summer, this is in the summer, this amaryllis is blooming. I love azaleas, and this is a red azalea. I took a picture of it at Blooming Miracles, and my tag is long gone, unfortunately, and I don't remember the name of it, but it is a bright red. It almost has a darker tinge in it, not really orange, but it is masterfully red. I keep wanting to call it Valentine's Day, but I don't think that's the name of it, so don't quote me on it. But if you need a red azalea, this is one of the few that I'm going to show you. Here's another camellia, another elegant flower that is blooming, and this is red, but remember, reds can be mixed and can look a little more pinky than they are red. I'm going to go back here. I don't know how many of y'all know that the camellia is the state flower of Alabama, even though it hails from Japan, China, Asia. Our people who are in power decided that this should be our state flower. One would think they might try to get a native flower to be our state flower, but they chose the camellia. Camellias are fabulous. If you go on Facebook and look up Alabama camellia group and look at some of the camellias that they are growing down in Mobile, you will be amazed. And you'll want camellias in your yard, and rightfully so. Every yard needs several. Now, this camellia is not in bright, bright sun. They like dappled shade, they like acid soil, they don't like to be planted deep, and they are drought tolerant when they get established, but at first they need water. And folks, they can get huge. They can turn into trees, but every yard needs a camellia, or 2 or 3. Or if you're like Hayes, you have 250 Hayes Jackson. I also developed a fascination with Bromeliads. This is a house plant, but I love this red flower. It's the only way I can describe this is dramatic. Now, it blooms and then it stops blooming, and then it gets moved outside to live during the summer, and then when it gets cold, it gets to live on the back porch. I have never, ever gotten one to rebloom, but I can't bear to throw them away, so I just keep moving them on my porch and asking my husband just to walk around them. I don't know the secret to reblooming them, but I can tell you, buy one. I see them around at the big box stores. I also see them in Publix. That's where I buy a lot of mine. You will get, whatever they cost, you will get that much pleasure out of them in your house. Because red goes great in your house too. This is a lobelia. I've just started with these this year. It's also called a cardinal flower. It's a perennial. The hummingbirds love it. It can actually grow by a stream or in a bog garden, but it likes wet feet and it also likes sun. And I recently created a bog garden out of a big black pot, and I've got one of these planted in it, and I look forward to seeing what it does. Now, there are different lobelias that are different colors, and some of those are annuals, whereas this is a perennial. This is a fabulous plant. It's called a bee balm or Monarda. It is a magnet for pollinators. The only thing about bee balm is it tends to get powdery mildew. And so once it blooms, I cut it back to the ground and let it come back again. I have never gotten one to bloom like this, but I keep trying because I know eventually I will get the right chemistry and mine will look like this. But this is a gorgeous flower, and you will be rewarded by visits from every bee in your neighborhood when you plant this. Salvia Gregia. Whenever I top mess in the Salvia Gregia, prune it or whatever I do, it smells a little funny. It smells a little like sage. And when I come in, my husband said, you've been in the salvia? And I said, yes. Most people love the smell. This is a fabulous perennial for dry, hot, sunny places. It is a hummingbird's delight. The butterflies love it, the bees love it, and you will love it. The only care that it needs is sometime in February you cut it back to the ground because it gets a little bit woody. Every garden with a sunny place needs a Salvia Gregia. And they're not hard to find. You can find them online. Sometimes they're on sale at Longleaf, sometimes at the Tree Amigo plant sale in the spring. But anywhere online you can find these. Blooming Miracles may even have them. But this is a terrific plant if you've got a dry place. I really do love it, and I like the smell. It doesn't bother me in the least. My dog gets in it, and then she smells like sage too. This is probably, okay, I'm only going to say this is one of my favorite plants one more time. This is pineapple sage. I planted 3 of these last year. 2 of them did not do well. This one did so beautifully. It's got chartreuse leaves, red flowers, And Hayes Jackson told me it's a lucky perennial. It may come back and it may not. I have not gotten it to come back, but that would not stop me from buying it. This is another one of those pollinator jewels. And when you rub the leaves, they smell like pineapple. And so you get gorgeous color and you get fragrance and you feed the pollinators. You know why I keep talking about pollinators? Because we have to have our bees. They pollinate our food. We must have our butterflies, and we need to be able to feed the hummingbirds. And this full of hummingbirds is a delight. I don't grow dahlias, but I know a lot of people do, and this is a powerhouse, this red dahlia. My sister grows them. She grows the dinner plate dahlias, and she says they require some staking, but they're perennial, and she tells me they're fabulous, and as you can see, this is fabulous. Okay, I'm just going to say this is my favorite lily. I didn't say it was my favorite of all plants, my favorite lily. It's Lilium Stargazer. It's an oriental lily. It blooms about end of June, July. Oriental lilies bloom later than Asiatic lilies, but this is probably one, second to the peony, is probably the most beautiful thing that I grow. One tip, if you get these lilies and you want to take them in the house, make sure to cut off the little tips that have the pollen on it, or your clothes will look like they've been spread with mustard. I don't pick my flowers and bring them in. I want them in the yard. I want to look out the window. I want to see the red. You can't have too many of these. So everybody remember Stargazer lily. I want one. Get one. Rejoice. Paint the garden red. This is a native coral tree, Eartharina. It does get pods on it after the red flowers. But you see, this is another gorgeous red. And another one that the pollinators go to. And you can see here how great the red looks up against the green. Now, if I'm not mistaken, the Tree Amigas 4-H program usually sell these, but I can't guarantee it. You might check next spring. But it's quite an interest, and it's big. It gets big leaves on it and gets to be a big plant, but it's beautiful, full sun. I have not grown this one, but I'm thinking about it this year. This is an annual salvia. I took a picture of it at Lowe's. It's called Vista Red. And this is another full sun, and you see it is fire engine red, and that would really, really catch your attention in the garden. And if I were going to plant this particular flower, I would want it masked so that you really, really are captivated by it. Little story about this azalea. I do not know the name of it. When I moved to my house 48, soon to be 49 years ago, we were just out of graduate school, and I didn't know a thing. But evidently, I must have seen this azalea somewhere and planted it in my yard 48 years ago. It's a little bit leggy, but I wait every year to look out my window and see this red, and there's nothing like looking out the window and seeing a mass of red somewhere. It is under a loquat tree, which has a delicious scent. But this is my special red azalea that has been with me 48 years to comfort me every year. And it is the most exciting day when I look out and I plant that and I see that red azalea that's been with me all these years. You know, when you push plant people, every plant has a backstory. They'll tell you where they got it, how long ago they planted it, whether it does a good job, whether it makes them happy, whether it's trouble. Here's another fabulous red plant that was given to me by a fellow master gardener. It's Texas Star Hibiscus. Has gorgeous red flowers on it. Well, we planted it in the pocket park, and some of you may have noticed that its leaves look a little bit like a marijuana plant, but it's not. It's a hibiscus, Texas star. And we were at a meeting, and somebody sort of called me out across the room and said, "Who planted the pot plant in the pocket park?" I said, "It's not a pot plant. It was a Texas star hibiscus." They are a woody shrub. They get very tall. They'll be covered with these gorgeous red blooms. You cut them back after the frost gets them, and then the next year they're back again, just this beautiful. And you can see the day I must have taken the picture, it had rained. This is a gorgeous red plant. Gerber Daisies. What can we say? They're fabulous. I like to start buying them in about, the end of December, the 1st of January. The big box stores will sell them, and I bring them inside as a house plant. I love them. And then when summer comes, I take them outside. I have better luck with them in the house than I do outside, because if you let them dry out, they'll wilt. And I know people that say they come back, but I have not had that experience. But I say fill up your kitchen table with red Gerber daisies, and when you need a little perk up in February, you got these. This is another lily that a friend who passed away gave to me, and for some reason it didn't come up last year, and I was heartsick. But this is an Asiatic hybrid. I don't know its name, but it is a gorgeous, gorgeous shade of red. Well, okay, this is another of my favorites. It's Camellia Japonica, Black Magic, and it's almost a black red. And I cannot tell you how gorgeous this camellia is. There's not a plant that's really black, although I saw some, but this is considered to be on the black side of red. And if you really want to do something for yourself for the holidays, get one of these. Daylilies, they're always wonderful, and this is a red daylily. It may look a little bit orangey, but remember, rust is in the red family. And you can put red daylilies, spot them all over your garden for your little hint of red. A summer garden needs daylilies, and this is a perennial, and it is quite lovely. It doesn't look real. It looks like a painting. Most people know what a lantana is. Has funny smelling leaves. The bees and the butterflies love it. So do the hummingbirds. Some are annual, some are perennial. I took this picture somewhere, and I'm not sure whether it is an annual or perennial, but I carry my camera with me, and not everything has a label, but the red on it is fabulous. And look how the red and yellow go together when you talk about color combinations. Red and yellow is wonderful. All right, this is a glorious azalea. It's called Midnight Flare, and it's basically considered almost to be black. I have had several of these, and I've just planted another one. I lost a couple of them, but that didn't stop me. I planted another one because this is gorgeous. This is the stuff dreams are made of. This is a native azalea, and I lost the tag, but it is red. It's red. You can see the blooms before they open are red, and they open up orange. A native azalea is a deciduous azalea. That means it has no leaves on it during the winter. You don't really prune it. You just leave it, and they will take a little more sun than a regular azalea, but these are not full sun plants, and I do keep mine watered in the summer. These are blooming right now, Quince. They bloom on stems with no leaves. The flowers bloom before the leaves come out. And this is a gorgeous red one. We have an orange one blooming at the Jacksonville Pocket Park, but I really love this red one. Okay, I have a thing about caladiums, and I just spent weeks digging up 300 of them and drying them, putting them in little bags, and cleaning out my utility room so I could keep them at the proper temperature. If you will look in the right-hand corner, you will see red flash. And that's one of the showiest red caladiums. But what I wanted you to see was, look how the red goes with the pink. Look how the red goes with the chartreuse. Look at the pink with the red veins. Look at how all of that kind of goes together and creates something magical in your garden. People might say pink and red together. Oh, well, pink and red together is dynamite. Now, Japanese maples have been fabulous this year. Many of the leaves come out red in the spring, and I believe this is a spring Japanese maple coming out red and then probably turn into green over the summer. And then what happens when fall gets here? Fall paints the garden red, and we have a lot of these beautiful red Japanese maples. And you talk about something that'll take your breath away. You have one of these out in your flower bed and look out the window at these red leaves. It almost looks like a little bitty fire. Folks know dogwoods have red leaves, and you see they're two different. There are two dogwoods here, and one has kind of a maroony red leaf, and one of them has more of an orangey red leaf. But they're still got the red in them to give you that fall color. This is an oak leaf hydrangea, and the leaves, it did not bloom last year, and I'm sorry to say, but the red leaves on it this fall made up for the fact that it didn't bloom. I'm thinking this could be ruby slippers, but I am not absolutely sure, but oak leaves get red leaves on them. And then you've got this other splash of red. I love heucheras. Heucheras are known for their foliage. They are a perennial. They are an evergreen perennial. I have way too many of them because they come in all colors, and this is a red one. They have little tiny flowers on them in early spring, but you really grow them for their foliage, and they're evergreen, and this is a fabulous red. I wish I knew the name of it for you, but look for a red heuchera. Now, these are not full sun plants, and if you put them in full sun, they will pout and be miserable. I put these in part sun, and I do keep them watered over the summertime. They don't freeze back. I've got them all over my yard right now. This is another fabulous plant for the garden. This is a pitcher plant. This is a carnivorous plant, and I have several, but this one is very, very red. And as we turned into fall, you can see how red the little pitchers. What happens is, and it's fascinating because I got to watch, is a bee was humming around it because there's like nectar around the little tops of it, and it fell in. And once you fall in, that's it, you don't get out. And that poor little bee was trying to get out, and pitcher plants produce an enzyme that actually sort of melts down whoever happens to be in there, and then they use that liquid to get whatever they need to survive. But you don't feed them McDonald's hamburgers. You could feed them a fly if you wanted to, but they don't eat McDonald's. Coleus comes in a lot of colors, and this is a maroon coleus edged with chartreuse, and you see how well that goes together. Leaves and flowers are not the only thing that's red. Look at these gorgeous holly berries, just in time to decorate for the season. Nandina. It looks orangey red, so we're going to call it rust. Everybody loves Nandina berries. Everybody, but there's a real sad story about Nandinas. They are considered to be an invasive plant, and every one of those berries will make another plant. So if you really, really, really want a Nandina, cut the berries off. This is not a plant. I mean, it's gorgeous. Or the minute you see those berries, cut them off and put them in your house and put them in an arrangement. But you don't want to be growing Nandinas in your yard for the berries. They are a plant that runs over our native plants and sort of becomes a neighborhood bully. Pyracantha, these are gorgeous red. I've seen pyracantha that was more orangey, and this is more red, and they have the terrible thorns on them, but they're gorgeous right now. I took this walking down the street the other day in my neighbor's yard. I love the Yopon holly berries, and its real name is Ilex vomitorium. Does that give you a clue about these berries? If you eat them, you will be in the vomitorium, and they used to use them a long time ago to make people throw up who had eaten something they should have. But the berries are still fabulous. Dogwood berries, they're gorgeous. They're usually not this perfect, but I had a little short story about the dogwoods berries. Every year, a crop of migrating birds comes in. I thought maybe they were cedar waxwings. My neighbor thought they were starlings, but a real bird person said they are migrating birds. But I had hundreds and hundreds of birds in my dogwood trees picking these berries. My car was dive bombed. I wore a hat because I never knew when they'd be out there. They got my sidewalk. And when they would all settle into the dogwood tree, the tree would actually vibrate. All of a sudden they'd fly out and the sky would turn black. Really fascinating, unless you got your car out there, in which case you could be in a little bit of trouble, or you happen to be walking under the tree. Now, red is not just flowers, just berries. Here is coral bark maple. This is sangukaku, and in the winter, the bark turns bright red. The leaves on this right now are very chartreuse. They're chartreusey yellow, and they're fixing to fall off. And the bark will turn bright red. So you have another red highlight for your yard. I had to include red tomatoes. I mean, how can you talk about red without tomatoes? A tomato is a fruit that we can all grow and all eat. And it's a wonderful shade of red. Strawberries. Last year, someone brought me some strawberries from the strawberry farm in Munford, and they were this color red, and they were an absolute delight. So here's another red in the garden. So we will finish. We're finishing a little early. Teresa may have some questions. Paint your garden red. Here's some more zinnias. Paint your garden red. Celebrate your garden. Paint the town red means celebrate. So celebrate your garden with red flowers. And maybe we found a flower here that you would like to have in your garden, because I think everybody needs to have a pop of color. Winter, spring, summer, or fall. There's something red that you can have in your garden to bring you pleasure. And for heaven's sakes, we all need it. I even found that red, we can get so excited looking at red that it can raise our blood pressure. So you don't want an entire red garden in one color. Excuse me, while y'all look at paint, I'm going to pick up these questions. We have a very good question. When is the best time to plant a camellia? That's a great question, because now's the best time to plant a camellia. Master gardeners say, and most horticultural experts say, that the best time to plant woody shrubs, evergreen shrubs, trees, is in fall, when the plant can concentrate on putting down good solid roots, doesn't have to worry about the leaves, doesn't have to worry about the flowers, doesn't have to worry about the heat. You take advantage of that tree's growth patterns. So now is the time to go forth and plant a camellia, and you can plant all the way through February if the ground is not frozen. Starting about March, as many of y'all will remember, we will have 2 days of winter in March, 3 days of spring, and then we'll have summer. And then you have to do a lot of extra preparation to get that plant in the ground. But if you plant it now, Mother Nature usually gives us enough water over the winter to keep it watered. If for some reason we don't get water, you will need to water. And the first year or 2 years until a plant is settled, please keep it watered. Just because something may eventually be drought-proof when it's 50 doesn't mean that it's drought-proof. But you might, I am not sure if Longleaf Botanical Gardens is open anymore for plant sales, but they had a fabulous array of camellias. And then you get to help the gardens this year because they missed their big sale. But you might call Anniston Museum and see if they have any days, because I bought too many camellias out there because I couldn't decide, so I bought one of each. My good friend Lynn Webb, who is one of the dearest people I know, said, I thought a red car would stop others from pulling out in front of me. Nope, they can't see that color car either. No, I don't think a red car, it gets the attention of people who are looking at cars. And they said if you had a sleepy policeman who's been watching gray cars and all of a sudden a red car comes by, they might look to see if it's speeding. Now, I had an old Volvo, and it was burgundy, and it never attracted any attention from anybody. It was more on the maroon side of red, and it just kind of loped along. But I do know a lot of people that have red cars, and I always thought I wanted one until I found out that police give more tickets to red cars than they do. I guess it's because it attracts their attention, and if they happen to be speeding, they get caught before maybe a gray car does. I don't know what's the psychology behind that. But I think that is about all we were going to talk about. It's just I want you to plant some red. Make yourself happy. Paint the garden red. Celebrate the garden. I wish all of you a very, very happy holiday season in this sad time. People have lost people they love, and they've lost jobs. And here I'm talking about painting the garden red, and they're saying, what is she doing? Gardeners are optimists. We have learned to deal with the pandemic by burying ourselves in the flowers, even pulling weeds, looking at seed catalogs because you can get seeds for not very much money. But please stay well and stay healthy. And please join us again. We'll be here the second Tuesday in January, and we're going to talk about New Year's resolutions for the gardener. So many people started gardening last year during the pandemic. They looked around at their yards and they said, wow, I can do better. Or the garden was a safe place to go. So we got a lot of new gardeners. So we're going to give some advice on making your garden a more successful place, a more peaceful place, a place with less stress, and a place where you can retreat when you need a calm place to go to work and just shut the rest of the world out. Anyway, I wish all of y'all well. I'd like to thank the library for allowing me to come here and occasionally get a word wrong and presenting what I know and what I love. And if you have a suggestion, you can post it on the library as a comment, or you can send it to me at the Southern Gardener, the Anniston Star. We have a Facebook page. And this is just on Facebook, but the library's going to be getting it onto YouTube. So, hey, if you want to watch it 5 times, go for it. You're like me, you forgot after the first time, so you have to watch it twice. Goodbye, so long, and I look forward to 2021.